Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 89 of the Dads and Ed podcast. We are officially into October. Fall happened. I don't know if you were outside, Devin, but at like 6:20 today, from leaving my house to driving to church, the temperature dropped 12 degrees in less than 20 minutes.
Yeah,
pretty crazy.
Which is a good thing because it was pretty miserable today.
It was
hot. The heat and the humidity. It was pretty gross.
Yeah, 90 degrees in the Midwest in October is not normal.
Yeah, no.
But anyway, I was actually listening to last episode. I believe we talked weather at the beginning of that. I think that means we are either getting old or we need better things to talk about. I actually made a promise to myself I was not going to talk about weather, and dang it, how do we start the podcast?
Well, way to keep the promise to yourself for about 30 seconds.
Oh, wonderful. Bill Little already checking in. Bill missed last show. Bill is on 1 minute into the show.
Wow.
That is impressive, Bill. Welcome.
Earlier than us.
He just beat us. My name is Josh Allen. 4 wonderful kids, 1 wonderful wife, technology integration specialist, Lewis Central Community Schools, Council Bluffs, Iowa. Pleased as always to be joined by the co-host. That's you.
Oh, that's me. Yeah. I forgot we didn't have Brent around anymore. Devin Schoening, Council Bluffs, Iowa, at the wonderful Council Bluffs Community School District. And have 2 wonderful young ladies who seem to be fighting out in the other room, so that's probably a good thing that I'm in here. I'm sure that my wife can handle it. She is more than capable.
Hopefully.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of your wife, I noticed on the Twitters this weekend that your wife made you cook pancakes.
Yeah, it's the
how it went down.
Is kind of ridiculous. That is kind of how it went down. I was up early watching the Ryder Cup, and I think she might have sent me a text that said, "Are you making pancakes?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, Josh is making pancakes in his house." So I made pancakes.
Oh, that's nice of you. It is somewhat of a tradition that usually Saturday mornings. I don't cook, but I do enjoy making breakfast. I do enjoy making dessert. Those are the 2 meals that I like the best.
Right.
And so, yeah, I usually do that on Saturday mornings. And I forget, my almost 6-year-old decided to put sprinkles in our pancakes. We don't like fancy pancakes. We go normal, regular pancakes.
Yeah.
And whipped cream. That's our thing. But she decided, she saw on the back of something about mixing in sprinkles.
Okay.
So that's why it got posted. I
don't know where the I just kind of find recipes when I was doing it, but they were good. They were really good pancakes that I made this last week. So it was probably good for everybody. I enjoyed them as well, even though I had to get up and make them. But that's okay.
Are you a mix guy? Do you got to buy the Bisquick or stuff like that, or you go?
I'll make them from scratch. Find some recipes online and do a little twist. I like putting a little cinnamon in everything.
Oh yeah, see, my 8-year-old hates that.
Yeah, see, I love cinnamon.
I have tried to sneak that in on multiple occasions because one of my favorite from scratch pancake recipes has that in it.
Yeah.
And but I have gotten lazier this fall. I went with the Bisquick mix, which I actually, to be honest, I don't like. Cooper's Best. If you can find Cooper's Best, I know like the local Hy-Vee has it. I don't know if the Council Bluffs one would, but it's a small little Western Nebraska thing. They make the pancakes are thicker. Bisquick ones are a little too thin. I like thick pancakes. So,
have you ever made them with the blueberry muffin mix?
I don't think so.
A good recipe with blueberry muffin mix as the as kind of the base for it. Those are pretty good too.
If this parenting podcast doesn't work out, we should do a cooking one.
We could. I mean, obviously, we have the requisite skill and knowledge to run a cooking podcast as well.
I was actually, I'm pretty sure a few years ago I talked about this on the show, but I had talked about putting together like a blog with the different types of pancakes that we make. And my wife goes, "You cook one meal a week and you want to blog about it. I cook the other 20 and no one says anything."
I would agree. We had, I've got some friends who even about this podcast be like, "What do you know about? Who are you to have a podcast?" I said, "Well, nobody listens. It's not like it's
true." Yeah. Well, I haven't done the numbers. Yeah. One time we were at 100 downloads per show.
Well, look at that.
I mean, we're kind of big.
We're kind of big.
We're big time tonight. We got the Tech Rabbi Michael Cohen coming on here shortly. Sure. Looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Send us your favorite pancake mix. You can tweet at us at Dads and Ed. Drop your favorite breakfast to make on the hashtag Dads and Ed. If you missed part of the show, check out our website, dadsanded.com. You can subscribe in iTunes or Google Play. Just do a search for Dads and Ed. We're also a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. We were talking before we came on the show. A couple weeks ago, we had Jesse Lubinsky on. Their new podcast, Partial Credit, is pretty darn funny. Just listen to episode 4 today. They were talking about their walk-up songs. They have, I'll be honest, if you got a walk-up song, I think you only need one. They, I don't know if you caught that part of it, but they have like a walk-up song for like every part of the school day. Like, pick one. And just welcome to the jungle, and then just adapt it for whatever situation you're in.
Right.
You can check them out at partial.credit. Otherwise, check out all the Education Podcast Network at edupodcastnetwork.com. I am going to drop the water cooler topic for today on the hashtag. Technology is a Distraction is a blog post by a former guest, Dean Sharesky, talking a little bit about the impact that technology is having with kids and how we're using it. He brought up a great point that the smartphone, or the seniors that are graduating today have had a smartphone in their hands since approximately 5th grade. So I'm going to put that link out there, and I'll let you chime in on it while I type. So
yeah, well, just, the thing that, I read the post a while ago and reread it today as I was thinking about some things for tonight. But the thing that I was curious about and thought we could talk about a little bit was this idea of like, what do we do, or should we do as parents to kind of help with that social and emotional part? So taking the school part out of it for right now, my daughters have cell phones and have, let's see, they both got them when they were 10 or 11. So Gracie has had hers for a few years now. And, it always, we've tried to be good about being kind of open to what they were going to do, but also setting some limits and trying to disconnect at times. But I know we're not good at that. Do you think, like, how do you guys do that? I know your kids don't necessarily have cell phones yet, but they do, I know, use tablets and other devices. What do you guys do in terms of like disconnecting? You're muted.
Dang it. Technology's hard sometimes. Our kids usually get to watch a show or two on a regular basis. Sometimes that's in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon. Yeah, for better or worse, our kids aren't necessarily attached to it. We don't let them spend 3 or 4 hours on it. I actually sometimes feel really bad on Saturdays when all I want to do is sit and watch college football, but then I'm trying to tell my kids don't stay on the tablet. So it's caused me to get up and move around a little bit. I think so often we've just used it as a babysitter. And I would probably argue not us personally. My wife is much better about not doing that than I am. But I think too many parents have just turned their kids loose to this Wild West. And I think that's really what gets at. That's been the biggest issue, I think, with what Dean talks about in the article. It's parents don't understand it. It keeps the kids quiet. And So kids are just out there. They're walking down a dark alley all by themselves.
Yeah, and and Dee poses a few questions in there. Like, are we helping kids think through what it means to be, how do you be alone? What does it mean to be disconnected? I think we've talked before about things like, how it's important to be bored sometimes and figure out what it's like to be bored. I know on the newest iPhone update, I haven't looked at mine. I know Aaron has, but it has that screen time. This kind of tells you how much time you've been on your phone. And she was even saying, she's like, I was kind of appalled at looking at it, like being aware of how much, I was on my phone. I'm going to, she's like going to be much more cognizant, she says, about being off of it a little bit. And I'm kind of scared to even look at mine to see what the numbers are. But I wonder how much of it is just kind of awareness too. Like, how do we, knowing that it's around and knowing that kids are going to have access to it, and knowing it's probably not going backwards, is awareness just helping make kids aware of your phone for 7 hours today? Does that help, or does it make it worse? Like,
yeah, it's kind of like, as I was looking at mine, kind of like a Fitbit for your phone almost, like when you see that you've got 100 more steps to reach your goal, you get up and walk around. Well, this, I think in theory will say, I need to stay off of it a little bit more. I know, they institute some of that for kids, but I think there's quite a bit on Reddit, how you could figure out ways around it. Like you can delete the app and re-download the app and your timer starts over. So, I think it really is fascinating, because I also read a post yesterday by Gary V. And it talked about that you should just let kids be on screens, because this is the future that they're going to have. And, that's what you do at work, and that's what I do at work. And, I'm not doing his post a whole lot of justice, but it was kind of this different viewpoint that was kind of like, well, this is the way society is. It's not the society that we had. Not, you still need to be outside. You still need to move around. You still need to exercise. But, it's not as bad as what we're making it out to be. I think that the point in Dean's technology as a distraction that really concerns me is the mental health part of it. And you brought up being alone, and we tell our kids that a lot. Middle of the afternoon on weekends is not the time for you to be on a tablet. That's the time for you to be going and hanging out with the neighbors. And, well, there's nothing to do. Good. That's perfect. Great ideas happen when you're bored. So, we really push that with our kids and do try to get them off. We're not perfect, far from it, but
and that's what I think we struggle with sometimes, because it's a matter of, it's not all screen time is not equal. Yes. And, where you're talking about the idea that it is kind of a reality, there are things sometimes I think we assume what's happening when kids are on their phones, and it turns out maybe it's not quite what we thought it was. There have been plenty of times I've kind of told them to get off, and they were doing something kind of creative, or looking something up, or I know that I sometimes feel a little self-conscious if I'll read books on my phone, and if I'm sitting in a waiting room somewhere, or I'm sitting, I have a few minutes I'm reading, being a little bit self-conscious about people thinking, oh, he's just on his phone. I'm actually reading a book. Like, I just think it's hard to figure out exactly what's happening when anybody's on devices, whether it's us or kids.
Yeah, that is. I recall being in a meeting once where I didn't have a computer or anything. I had my phone. I pulled up Evernote. I was typing notes for the meeting in there, and it was one of my bosses. I didn't. It's my own fault because I didn't say what was going on. I just was typing away, and he goes, "Are you texting somebody? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, I'm sorry." I showed him. I'm like, "I'm taking notes." You don't want to default to that, but you also have to understand that does happen. You got to talk. You got to communicate. The mental health part is really the concerning part to me. That we're at that point that kids don't understand the difference between the different realities, the screen reality and the reality around them. Those, I think, are the things that I really push kind of with our kids.
Right. It's tough though. It is not getting any easier. That's for sure.
No. All right. Speaking of kids, dad moment of the week. My 8-year-old is into dumb jokes that her dad finds hilarious. Just in the last few weeks, I'm not even sure like where it came from, but she has just started telling random jokes that are funny. I think that she had to have one for school, so now she is getting into them. And I try to like, be the cool dad and not laugh at the corny jokes. However, sometimes I just cannot help myself. So today we're leaving gymnastics, and she says, "Dad, what newspaper? What is it? What magazines do cows read?"
Okay.
And I said the Moose paper, and she goes, "No, the catalog."
Yeah.
I know. I laughed. I mean, like I tried to be cool about it, but I laughed. It was funny. It was very like old man dad of me to laugh at it, but I thought it was funny.
That is funny, and I love that she's just trying to find jokes to make you laugh. That makes
He knows it's not hard.
Makes me happy. Yeah.
I'm easily entertained.
We all know that. That's okay though. Mine was kind of there. We had one of those. I guess I would call it like a signpost moment in parenting this last week. As Grace, who's a freshman in high school, went to her first homecoming dance with a group of friends, and I was at open gym tonight. One of my assistant coaches kind of asking me about, I saw those pictures that make you feel old or nostalgic or, sad. And I said, no, it really was just kind of this cool, she's growing up moments, right? But to see her all dressed up and to kind of hear about the fun that she had that night, to see her and her friends taking pictures and figuring all that out along the way, it was, it was just kind of one of those cool signpost moments where it's going to happen at some point. And to see it happen with her was really kind of cool. So she had a fun night Saturday. Went and picked her up. She went and had pie at Village Inn after the dance. We had to pick her up from there. But yeah, it was kind of a cool parent moment this last week.
Nice. Superfan Bill checking in. His 7th.
Hello?
Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
We can. How are you? I don't think you can hear us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to be joined by Michael Cohen, a.k.a. the Tech Rabbi, at the Tech Rabbi on Twitter. He is Director of Innovation at Eula Boys High School in Los Angeles, California. Michael's appearance tonight is sponsored by Crayola. Have your kids missed a wall in your house? Grab a new box of Crayola markers so they can finish the job and live up to Crayola's motto of no wall left untouched. Michael, that's not a real plug, but we don't really have any real sponsors, so we make up our own. How you doing,
That's
my
awesome. I'm good. It's been a funky day with the weather. We're not used to any sort of rain, so it's been sort of like
you got the hurricane, right?
Yeah, so it's like the whole day you're anticipating and like not doing things because it's gonna rain, which sounds very silly when you say it out loud. And then it literally rained for 45 seconds. So now we're like, well, we could have like gone out to like the park. We could have, done something today.
If you know anything about weather, it is impossible to have a hurricane where we live here in the Midwest because we're not by water. However, I got a lot of email this summer about how I need to have like these hurricane-proof backups for the school district. Are we prepared for hurricanes? And I finally responded back and I said no, and I don't care.
Oh man,
probably
that's good.
I'm gonna say the little bit of rain you had out there probably making runs on the grocery stores and making sure there's enough to, enough sustenance to keep you going for the 45 seconds of rain, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes it actually does rain. Not by any other standard except for LA, but people don't know how to drive. That's the real struggle. It's like it's wet. Like, what do we do? Do we drive regular? Do we drive really slow? It gets a little interesting in that space. But I literally didn't leave my house today. I wasn't scared. I had my kids home today, and it just was like, anyway, it's all good.
But it is funny when it's those random weather situations that we're not used to. For us, it's the beginning of snow in November when it starts to like think about snow or ice. It's like you said, people forget that they did this, like 8 months ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Do I go slow? Do I go fast? So I go over it faster? I forget. Okay,
Yeah.
enough about weather. We just got done with a conversation about how old we are because we have started the last 2 shows talking about the weather. So your situation is different in that it is a major event with the hurricane, but we don't want to we want to target our demographic younger than what we are because that's where most people are because we're getting old. So enough about the weather. Tell us about you. Tell us about your job and your family.
Cool. Relatively new position, not new type of work, but a new position. December, I came on board Eula Boys High School after about 1.5 years of traveling and engaging on a national level, a little bit international. I crept into a cool speaking gig in Monterrey, Mexico, but really just trying to explore and see what does the face of education look like around the world, and missed being engaged in a school. I'm not so much a classroom. I haven't been a classroom teacher in about 7 years, but director of the education technology, director of innovation. I put myself in the classroom, but I was missing that feeling of seeing students on a regular basis, that I could see their growth and their progress and their successes. And was really excited and really fortunate to be there. My family, I am married with 4 children, 9, 8, 6, and 4. I have my 2 are 10.5 months apart. So I'm like, wait, which one? Are they both 9 yet? Okay, I got a September and an October, 2 boys, and I'm like, okay, they're both one's 8. They're both 8. One's not 9 yet. Yeah, so they're both 8 at the same time. That's crazy. So yeah, one will be 9 in a few weeks. So yeah, it's a full load, and it's definitely interesting, your own children and your extended children of, being, in education in that space. But it's fun. I think it's something that, I love being a father with all of its challenges. It's just really cool to see them grow and figure things out on their own. And that's my big joy in the education space, is really creating capable human beings at a much younger age than we expect, because I just feel education is looked at students as not very capable, and we must bestow, the knowledge and the information, and hopefully when they grow up, they'll use that knowledge then.
Well, we will get back to kind of that mixture of being parents and educators in a bit. I'm curious with your travels that you talked about and having opportunities to see education, like you said, the kind of face of education around the country. What kinds of things have you taken from that you're going to try and utilize in your position now?
So what I saw in my travels was that there is a movement. It's a very organic movement in almost any place that I visited, where there are educators that are really trying to change the face of education. And that really it just blew me away, because I think what's interesting is, social media is a funny space. It's a space of, either really, really bad stuff or really, really good stuff that's like perfect and pristine. And you miss out on like the middle kind of, goodness, but the reality, the day to day. And engaging with educators and really being surprised that there are so many educators who are not sharing out incredible work on social media and really putting it out there. But being able to go and travel and see those educators, whether it's at a conference, curating just incredible, ideas and information that it's not accessible. Mm-hmm. And that has fueled a lot of my work at the school that I'm at, realizing that, the teachers, especially because now I'm at a high school, and that actually was a shock for me. I started in high school, but I was a teacher. I was in my classroom. I was teaching design and graphic design, visual communication. And like, I just did what I did. And that was, my little microcosm. But going into K-8, seeing the hunger and the excitement, the educators would partner with me, but then going to the high school and they're like, well, wait, like my kids have APs and SATs and all these other things. Like, who are you, Mr. Innovation, Rabbi Innovation, whatever, right? So it showed me in my travels that there are ways to do incredible work in the high school space and at the high school level with, the work that I'm doing, but not missing out on opportunities because there is this college prep reality that's very real. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I answered your question. I just felt like that was like a tornado of ideas that just kind of like, woo.
No, that's pretty much right. And we've kind of have conversations like that. That's the interesting thing. One of the best things about this podcast, Josh and I have talked a lot about. It's great for us to get together and talk, but it's also great to have on, really smart people who have experiences that are different than ours, and hear how that's happening in places that aren't here in the Midwest. So, I think it's interesting to hear that perspective of seeing what it's like in all these different places and knowing there's great work, but it really is hard. And you kind of alluded to this. It really is hard to break through some of those realities, like you talked about the college prep and the AP and the truly academic nature of school, almost K-12 at this point.
Yeah, I've seen it's been around for a while, but that picture, it's always like a meme. Kindergarten college prep textbook, like how do you start the test at kindergarten, right? Like that was like a real book that came out. So yeah, oh man.
Wow. So I've had the privilege of being able to watch you speak, I think twice now in the last, maybe even just 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer than that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your background is a little bit of marketing and advertising, correct?
Yeah, I worked in the nonprofit sector for about 6 years, doing design and brand kind of storytelling. I worked closely with two specific nonprofits in the like Jewish young professionals space, and that segued me into teaching design courses, just really like as just something interesting. I said this, I said this at my ISTE keynote, and I say this pretty often, is that I never considered myself to be an educator. I know how to teach people how to do things, and in this case it was design. And then I'm realizing, education is about that result of my first teaching experience, which was feedback from the students at this. I taught first at Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in downtown Los Angeles, and the feedback was, he gave me the ability to be independent. He gave me these tools that then I could pursue things on my own, and it really felt powerful to know that you could give someone skills and then they could go, or give them knowledge, give them a place to go find information, and that they could be independent, they could do. And I just sort of kept building all those opportunities till I went full time and realized like, oh, this is the space that I belong in.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, this is more of a selfish question right now. We've talked, I don't know if we've talked on here, I guess, as much, but the last probably 6 months or so, I've had different high school interns to do social media stuff for us because we don't have a communication department. And so a lot of it is kind of what you are talking about. The feedback that you got is just being able to give them an audience for the work that they enjoy doing. So thinking about that background in your role now, how are you able to kind of blend those two things together? Or are you? Is it possible to talk design with the teachers that you're working with now?
So the teachers, not as much. I'm still working on that. I have to be honest. You know, it's really hard to get that far out there with the teachers, and you can bring design elements into it, whether it's design thinking, visual communication, humanities, even math and science. I'm seeing some pretty exciting things that are, you know, very close to formalizing, but it's actually a course that I created that I'm seeing the greatest impact in that specific area, which is that I launched a entrepreneurship course. And, you know, entrepreneurship, it's a very buzzy word, so I'm using it very cautiously. But the premise of the course is that they go on a journey of figuring out how their interests might impact the skills and the knowledge that they can develop and build up beyond the scope of traditional academic success, right? And so a lot of the students are really into social media because they're always on it on a you know, a social level, on a personal level. But when they realize how incredibly difficult it is to build brand, I mean, just define a brand, build a brand, get awareness around something. At the end of the day, it's all about value. Mm-hmm. And that has been a big push in the beginning. You know, but the school I teach at, it's an Orthodox Jewish high school. So we have this very, very interesting fall, which is there's a huge chunk of Jewish holidays that basically eat up the entire month of September. I think there were 8 days the entire month. And so we have to like restart tomorrow, right after, like, not, it's like the second fall, right? And it's very difficult. But this value, and really getting them to understand that the more value you provide, the more successful you will be at distributing your talent, your information, your advice. And so they want to get really into social media. And I'm just trying to tell them, like, you know, outside of your 100 or 1,000, you know, face-to-face connections, like, what value are you bringing that some random person across the country wants to engage with you and follow your content? And so then we start to get back into, well, you know, there are people using social media to be social media marketers or help with brand influencers, but that job only exists because there are people that are providing value in their niche, whether they are a lawyer or a doctor, or they are somebody in sports, they're a comedian, you know, whatever it is, design, art. So those people provide value. Then they create new jobs, which I think is kind of crazy. Like, YouTubers is now a real job. People are still kind of tongue-in-cheek about it, but 2-3 years from now, especially, and I get this a lot from Gary Vaynerchuk, who I'm pretty into as far as his podcast and his content, is when there will be a recession that will come at some point, because that's just the cycle of life. Whoever survives that will then become established. So if the YouTuber, this brand influencer, can survive a mini depression or recession, whatever it is, then it becomes something that becomes legitimate. And you see this with, you know, the .com burst, where, you know, 2000, you know, there were companies that just ceased to exist. Yeah. You know, pets.com? Was that one of the big bubble ones? Like, that just didn't work, you know? So I think it's showing them and having these types of conversations with the students, like, oh, you want to get into marketing? Who would pay you to market? What have you done to distribute information and get people interested, online or offline? Like, what have you done? So it's an interesting conversation. I need the English departments in high schools to take more time to dedicate to this. It's so important to have students be strong writers and visual communicators through persuasion, not like persuasive essays in the traditional sense, but like brand persuasion. Like how do you sell something that someone doesn't need? That's a really high level of writing.
Okay, go.
Quick follow-up, sorry.
Yep.
So you mentioned that you work in a high school. You also mentioned earlier trying to get these kids younger and younger. Joey Kirkland's watching. Mentioned he'd love to expose his 7th graders to this mindset, but he wasn't sure about how mature they would be in having those discussions. Where do you think some of these discussions should start?
I think we have there's 2 separate challenges. One is the maturity level, and then there's with social media, there's like a COPA, SIPA. I'm sure there's a couple other ones. If you have any listeners from Canada, they have even more intense stringencies than we do. So if it's a middle school class that they're over 13, so you can engage in that conversation in an actual real way. But it does become something that especially in the public school space, you have to be careful. So what I've seen successfully done is that you talk about you create a conversation around the essence of the platform, and then you can remove the platform, you can remove the stigma around that. So what does it mean to communicate via photographs and video? What does it mean to curate a series of photographs that and small short form writing, because there is a new type of blog style that happens in the Instagram comments. And once you do that, then it's not about Instagram. It's about, you can curate photo and video content. You can have these short form writing pieces that are attached, that are meaningful. And then maybe you can create an environment where students are curating their own photographs, because we do want to talk about digital citizenship and use permission. They're curating their own photographs and short form writing around it. And then you have the group of students in the classroom engaging with that content, and like whose content is the most engaging and why. And like, let's break it down. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it actually could work. Like, it literally could work. And the truth is, and with transparency, I've never tried that with like elementary school students, but I don't think that is yet a conversation for elementary school students. I think elementary school students are better served in talking about being thoughtful and careful in how they communicate information, and talk about theoretics like, what if everything that we said was recorded, and nothing you said was ever secret? Like, how would you respond? And have them like build those types of conversations. But once you get into middle school, I mean, the truth is, when the Apple Watch came out, and the 3rd grader came in with the Apple Watch, then we realized the 3rd grader had an iPhone this whole time. We're like, whoa, like we never, you're never searching the 3rd grader. You think it's a middle school thing. It's getting younger and younger. But you can have the conversation with the students in middle school, because they need to be ready. They need to be better prepared at the high school level, because there is a social component, there is a silly component, there is a fun component to social media platforms, and there is a $1 trillion business of these social media platforms, and getting them to understand how to communicate. Just a very quick example, because I want to be careful of my rambling, is I saw a sort of this pull this tweet up here. It's Brandon Steiner. Okay, so Brandon Steiner, I just want to pull his actual handle up. So it's BrandonSteiner. You can maybe put that in the show notes. So Brandon Steiner is the CEO of a sports memorabilia company. Super successful. I follow his content pretty regularly. And he said, ask me anything. That was like a tweet he put out. So I said, what is the single most important skill for high school students to have today? And he said, strong writing skills, because that leads to strong communication skills, period. So why do our students resent writing? Because we force them to write in a certain way or write about a certain thing. We don't give them that creative space. So I'm really about pulling apart the essence of social media. How do you communicate information? And now what is it, 280 characters or 40? I can't remember how they messed everything up here. 240, right? 240 characters are only in photos or only in short 15-second video. I mean, it's really hard. I did a daily little it was called EduDash, and one of my students found them and he's like, you need to revive this. And I'm like, I'm not sure if you're making fun of me or you're being serious, but 15-second video and getting that all out there so concisely so that you're not taking 50 takes is challenging. And the students need to know that as you start to look at social media and marketing and personal branding as a real thing, and it's something that you will need to have in your professional career, you can't wait till after college. It's too late. That's going to be the new divide, is who gets how to use this in an intelligent way.
Yeah, that part's really interesting, and it makes me, it pulls me back here. We're gonna maybe pull back to family a little bit. One of the reasons, and you started to allude to this when you were kind of talking about your family, but we kind of like to ask everybody on here about how both of these roles kind of impact us. So how being a parent has impacted the way that we are as educators, and maybe how being educators impacts the way that we parent. Can you talk about that experience a little bit for you?
Work in progress. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's helped. My children are very close in age. So I don't know if they've given me more patience as an educator, or if I have more patience with them because I've been in education. I'm sure it's both, but it's interesting to sort of I think I'm more self-aware of some of the pitfall isn't the right word, but we sometimes as parents get into the helicopter parent, or I've heard other terms now sort of creeping up. But as an educator, I talk all about empowerment and giving the students the tools that they need, and failure, first attempt in learning unless reflection exists. But then how do I, as a parent, allow my own children to fail is still a hard thing. And that, I think, is my sort of, eye on the prize moment as even just thinking over it right now is, how can I, I guess sort of practice what I preach, really let my children fail more so that they're stronger long-term, because that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm doing with my high school students. And there is obviously a difference between 14 to 17-year-olds and under 10, but I think it's important, and I think that I do have an experience that has impacted sort of how I engage with my students or with my children. I also think that it's interesting that I'm the tech rabbi, and I'm super into intentional technology. And I'm very careful with it, and my children, and that will change. I think that it's it's an appropriate level, but I think it's just important, because I'm so ed tech, so to speak, that people understand that when I developed a K-8 Apple distinguished school program that was one-to-one iPad, it was very intentional in the first, second, third grade. It wasn't until fourth grade, and really the second part of fourth grade, that I really started to push more technology use as a literacy of technology tools, versus with the younger ones, it was really experiential. So I think the technology role in my family's life has really been sculpted by how I research and see it impacting a larger group of students, of young children. And then also just like the patience and the failure, and, you know, but it's a work in progress. I mean, my wife thinks I'm a great dad, you know, she says like I'm pretty good. But, you know, I'm always like, you know, super, you know, judgmental on myself, you know, really just like high standards, unnecessary standards. But it's, you know, it's hard work having 4 kids. I ain't gonna lie.
Amen,
4
brother.
babies.
And Joey and Bill checking in again. Joey says it's so hard to watch your children struggle. You know it's good for them, but it's so hard to actually, you know, let them go through with that. So, all right, Michael, we have a few things that we're going to wrap up. Do you have time to stick around for a minute?
I got some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Our end of the show is called Sharing is Caring. So what we do is we share really anything that you want, any resource you want people to see. We are going to put a link in the show notes to your website where they can find all about you. But we'll give you a few minutes to think of what it is that you want to talk about. I am going to share. I've mentioned Taylor Siebert a couple times on here. You know, we talk about giving kids an opportunity. Taylor runs Strive TV and Class Intercom. Strive TV is fabulous for kids that want to do live broadcasting. He just has an amazing program there. Class Intercom is what we use and some other schools use to let students create social media content. And just this week, he announced a new project that they're working on. It's called NEB, Nebraska Preps. They are working with some of their Strive schools and some of their employees to do some more coverage of sports in Nebraska. So it is their employees, a couple of them, but they're, I think, relying pretty heavily on those kids that are doing some of the live broadcasting and wanting to create that content. So I will tweet their Twitter account. Twitter is the NEB Preps, PREPS. I think it's just NEB Preps on Instagram. He does just phenomenal work quality-wise. So he actually said that he had the website for 4 years and didn't know what he was going to do with it. And just this week, they finally got things together. So pretty excited to see where that goes. And I will tweet that out.
Yeah.
Devin.
I'm always impressed with the work he does. It's just so cool and kind of forward thinking and where it differs from, I mean, I think about myself and things I have, and he actually does them. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I've got my ideas, but boy, to go out and he actually goes out and makes those things happen, and is so good with kids. And yeah, I'm just always impressed with the work they're doing.
He does a really good job of challenging me to do, well, challenging our kids, which inadvertently challenges me, you know, just to create better quality content. You know, and like we tell our kids, we have the resources. We just need to find a way to get them to do it. So.
Right. No, very cool. They do good stuff. My share tonight is going to be a blog post from a future guest. So a couple purposes for doing this, but Catlin Tucker, who we're going to have on in November, second week in November, I think, has a recent post out which is about elementary book clubs for advanced readers and looking at how to structure those and how to set those up. And I think Catlin does as good a job as anybody I've seen who is in the classroom of making really practical uses out of what look to be kind of difficult technologies for the average teacher in terms of their tech ability, right? So she does a great job of kind of like laying it out there and saying, here's how you can do it. It seems like this really difficult thing. And in the way that she explains it, it's like, oh yeah, I could do that. And so I think this one's a really good one. You could read any post on her blog, and I think you'd end up coming away with something that you could utilize. But I'll tweet that one out. It's her most recent one. Again, all about elementary book clubs for advanced readers. Really good stuff.
All right, Michael. Hopefully we stalled long enough. What do you got for us?
Picking just one. It's never easy.
I know. See, that's the benefit of us doing this show every 2 weeks is we can spread them out. But yeah, normally that's what happens is the guest has 5 or 6 they need to drop. So take your time. You're the guest of honor.
Thank you. I think right now, looking at who is really influencing my work and really helping me, grow in the space of, creative mindset and, entrepreneurship, just giving students a stronger sense of both self-awareness and the tools to really explore. And, I use that word at my ISTE keynote because I think it's one of the most important words that we can give to our students. And the person right now, above so many others, like I'm saying, I'm trying to file here, am I ranking these people in my head right now? But it's just who am I looking to? Who am I having conversations with? Who's helping me when I'm stuck or I'm nervous that this is actually a total waste of time and just go back to essay writing, whatever, is Don Wettrick. So I've known him for a couple years now, both face to face on many occasions and on Twitter because he's in Indianapolis suburbs, so it's he's in Noblesville, right? So it's I don't get to Noblesville so often, but his work in especially now that I'm in the high school space with his innovation lab and the work that he is doing there is incredible. And he not only does he have students that are scaling the work that they're doing and actually leveraging social media to maturely and successfully distribute that value that we spoke about earlier, but even the students that aren't there are more capable and will become more valuable to their future employer. I think that really is what gets me excited about this space, is that not everyone is supposed to be a business owner. Being a business owner is extremely stressful, and it's not for everybody. It really is not. And he's giving students an opportunity that has influenced a lot of the work that I'm doing. So his Start Ed Up is now a foundation. Just following him, Don Wettrick at Twitter is his handle, is just powerful. I mean, his podcast and the guests. I mean, I feel like he's just he's doing awesome work. So he's my my one person right now that's just doing awesome.
You will be happy to know he is a former guest of this very program.
Sure.
Yeah, you choose well.
Hey, we did. We let the other ones go first before we had you. We didn't want to start with you and then go back to Don. So, and Don would laugh if he heard that. So, awesome, fabulous. He is absolutely wonderful. Great stuff that he's putting out there. So, all right. Well, we have come to the end of the show. Our next show will not be on a Wednesday night. In fact, I don't think the next 2 will be, because the one after that is Halloween, and we got to go get candy. We'll probably do it on Tuesday night, so everybody knows. Next show is going to be on the 16th of October. It's a Tuesday. It's going to be 11:30ish in the morning. We'll tweet out the actual details. We'll be live at iTech. It is our annual show where we're actually sitting next to each other.
That's true.
Yeah.
We happy to remember. I think was it last year I forgot to wish my wife happy birthday at iTech, Josh?
Oh, I don't know. Pretty much every year that we're on this show, you forget to wish your wife happy birthday.
She'll actually be there this year, so I don't think I can screw that.
She will.
So it'll be,
Hey, well, she can be the guest then?
She could be the guest.
Because looking at the schedule, all the featured speakers are presenting at the same time we are. I don't think we can just walk in and have our podcast in their session.
That's true. We've tried.
Michael, how would that go over if we show up? What's the next one you're going to be at? The EdTech teacher one, right?
I will be, the next event that I am at that's like a public conference is the ISTE it's like a tongue twister, the Creative Constructor Lab in Seattle in November.
So yeah, we'll just move our stuff in and we'll just do a live podcast while you're presenting. I mean, that'll go over great, won't it?
Yeah, I think so. It will show how innovation in classroom management, like
That's
still
right.
line up. You know, you can still, yeah.
When you've got two clowns that aren't paying attention.
Yeah, just redirect the flow of energy.
That's right.
All right, Michael. Well, we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to learning from you in the future.
Thanks so much for having me. Great conversation with both of you. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.